Hey gang, Craig Ripley here. Welcome once again to Living Off the Slab. Now today I'm going to continue with this Motorcycle Mythbusters series that I want to do over the course of this winter. And today I'm going to talk about, well, one of the holy grails of motorcycling, and that is lane splitting and filtering. Specifically, what I want to cover here is two questions. One, is lane splitting safe, or is it safer than not lane splitting? And then two, if the entire country, that is all 50 U.S. states, adopted some form of lane splitting or filtering, would it increase motorcycle ridership? Now, the reason that I want to discuss this topic is because it's been fairly popular on other motorcycle podcasts and video channels and so forth. It's been something that I think all of us motorcycles would like to do, and having been able to try it a few times while I was out in California earlier this year, it seems to be a topic that is worth discussing. So first of all, let's define our terms. Lane splitting, at least for the purposes of this discussion, is going to be defined as a motorcycle riding between two cars moving in the same direction. And the speed that those cars are moving, well, that's really irrelevant. So filtering, on the other hand, that occurs when traffic has stopped, such as at a light, and a motorcycle can move into the space between the cars and move up to the front of the line. Now, obviously, there's a little bit of a gray area there where both of these things overlap. For example, if you are out on a busy highway and traffic comes to a standstill or a stop and go type situation, then as a motorcyclist, it would be nice, of course, to be able to move out into that gap between the cars and continue on forward. And that is kind of a cross between lane splitting and filtering. Now, here in the United States, for most of us, this is actually a moot discussion because there are only two states that currently legalize some form of these two activities. The first is California, which has a pretty wide open lane splitting law that states that basically on any highway or secondary road, a motorcyclist is allowed to ride in that gap between the cars as long as there are two or more lanes moving in the same direction, and it really doesn't specify the speed of the car or the motorcycle in that description. Now, Utah, on the other hand, in I believe it's May of this year, 2019, passed a motorcycle filtering law, which allows motorcyclists on roads that are marked 45 miles an hour or less and traffic is stopped to move out into that gap between the cars and continue forward. Now, back out in California, lane splitting has only been, quote, legal, right, since 2017. However, it was being practiced long before that because the California Highway Patrol was, well, basically looking the other way. They wanted to be able to ride in that gap between the cars to get to accidents easier, right? And so they were looking the other way when motorcyclists were doing it as well. And the Highway Patrol also felt that this was actually safer for motorcyclists because in a stop-and-go situation on the busy California freeways, right, they believe that it decreased the risk of getting in a rear-end collision. So having the motorcyclists move out and continue forward, they felt was safer and also might alleviate a little bit of congestion. Now, something interesting in this debate is that prior to the law being passed in 2017 out in California, the Highway Patrol had put together a series of guidelines for motorcycle lane splitting. However, once the law was passed, there was a single individual who made a complaint that the Highway Patrol didn't have the legal right to post these guidelines, and therefore they were taken down. Now there are some more general guidelines that are out there, but the original guidelines are still available. And here, let me read those original guidelines to you. First, it says that the motorcyclist should be traveling no more than 10 miles an hour faster than the surrounding traffic. It is also not advisable to lane split when the traffic is flowing faster than 30 miles an hour. Right? And typically you want to lane split between the fast lane and the center lane, right? Not the lane where people would be pulling on to the highway and off of the highway. Again, all of those things make sense. Now, while I was on this trip that I did for 2019, my 60-day trip, I got to practice lane splitting out in California on 3 different occasions. In all of those instances, traffic had come to a stop or was moving very slowly forward, stop and go traffic at maybe 10 or 15 miles an hour. So I pulled the bike out into that space between the cars, right in the line, and miraculously, the cars move over for you. So people in California are trained that motorcyclists are going to do this, and they will actually move out of your way. It was really awesome, and said it's a great thing to be able to do as a motorcyclist, because of course we've all been stopped in that highway traffic where we're sometimes sitting there for hours. I know I have, and it's a very painful situation. However, while this is cool to have as a convenience for we motorcyclists, the question here is this really safer? Does this practice make you safer? And while on the face of it, yes, it's going to help eliminate rear end collisions in these type of situations, I could find no evidence to suggest that rear end collisions were any lower out in California than they are in any other state. Right? I also could not find any indication that traffic fatalities for motorcyclists are decreasing by any substantial number in California since this law was passed. Pretty much everything seems to be the status quo, right, with motorcycle deaths slightly rising as a trend over time and automobile deaths slightly decreasing. I also looked at the overall percentage of rear-end collisions, that is where a motorcycle is being rear-ended by another vehicle, and I found that that is really a rather low percentage of the overall accidents. Some reports suggest that it's about 5% of the time. However, the Virginia Tech study that was done, I believe, back in 2017, right, that indicated that it was just under 7% of the time. That Virginia Tech study also backed up what we know from the Hurt report, and that is that most motorcycle accidents do not happen on the highway. They happen on surface streets at intersections. Now, since Utah just passed their bill in 2019, we really haven't had enough time to know whether this is going to have any impact on the number of rear-end collisions. Okay? I'll honestly be surprised if it has a great impact, but I am hoping to be surprised. So after looking into this a little bit and then actually being able to experience it, like I said, out in California this year, I think for me, I would like to see a lane splitting or a filtering law, to be more precise, be adopted across the country. It is a great convenience, of course, to we motorcyclists, and if it does help to reduce even a small fraction of the motorcycle accidents, then it's a good thing. I think the problem is that with the way that it's practiced out in California, at least by some people, when the speeds get excessive, I don't think that it really reduces, right, your risk of an accident, right? If the cars around you, I should say, are going 60 miles an hour and you're lane splitting between them at 70 miles an hour, well, that's not reducing risk, that's actually increasing your risk. The cars aren't expecting it at that time. They could have just a slight waiver, right, in their path, and you may not be perfect when you're trying to split between the two automobiles. So that all is raising your risk for injury, right, not decreasing it. So before we move off of this topic and we move to our second one, I want to throw out some more statistics that I found while I was doing research here. And that is that in fatal motorcycle accidents, roughly 75% of the time, the motorcycle is the striking vehicle. I mean, think about that, right? We're not really being hit by cars that often. Most of the time, we're impacting the car. And while, yes, cars turn left in front of us, and Sometimes we just can't stop. I've had that happen to me when I was younger. However, most of the time, I think we have chances to avoid those accidents. Because I know back here in Massachusetts, I mean literally every day that I commute on my motorcycle, somebody pulls out from a side street, takes a left in front of me, somebody does something stupid. I've learned that I just have to be ready for that, right? Because it is going to happen. So if I'm approaching an intersection, like there are a few intersections that I know I need to slow down for as I go through them. Even though I have the right of way, I don't just barrel through them. I slow, I cover my brakes, I cover my clutch, and I might even move in the lane to make sure that people see me, right? And then after I've made sure that everybody is standing still, then I will proceed through. I never just barrel through that intersection. Because you see this all the time, right? All these videos on YouTube. I just see motorcycles coming through and impacting a car, taking a left-hand turn in front of them, and they don't make any avoidance maneuvers whatsoever. Right? So we have to take some of the blame for this. Another interesting fact that I found was that when a rear-end collision is involved between a car and a motorcycle, roughly 68% of the time, the motorcycle is the striking vehicle. Right? And that was backed up by that Virginia Tech study that I talked about earlier. Right? They studied both crashes and near crashes, and they found out that the number one near crash was the motorcycle almost rear-ending a car in front of it. Right? Following too close and not being able to stop safely. Right, so again, this is us, right, that needs to take the action here. Give yourself more distance, right? Slow down, right? You don't need to be in a hurry. So that brings us to our second topic, and that is if lane splitting or filtering was adopted throughout the United States, would it increase motorcycle ridership? And I don't know, I hear this mantra all of the time. Of course, again, as motorcyclists, we would like to have this tool in our arsenal to keep us a little bit safer. But would it make any difference as far as getting more riders out there on the road? To answer this question, it would seem that all we have to do is look at California. California has been allowing the practice of lane splitting and filtering for quite a long time now, even though it just became legal in 2017. And do they have any increase in the number of motorcycle riders? And again, I cannot find any evidence that that is true. In fact, while California, of course, being the most populated state, has the largest number of registered motorcycles in the state, again by far, with 40 million people or thereabouts, they have some 800,000 registered motorcycles there. Right. However, when you look at that on a per capita basis, California is only 42nd or 43rd, right, in the number of registered motorcycles. All right, so I don't see that lane splitting has definitely increased the percentage of ridership, at least on a per capita basis, in California. And of course in Utah, as I said earlier, it's only been around since May of this year, so it's really too early to tell. Again, we'll see. Like a decrease in rear-end collisions, I will be surprised, honestly, if it increases ridership in Utah at all. Because I think people aren't not riding because they can't lane split, right? There are many more complicated reasons why ridership is not going up, or at least among the demographic that we would like to see it going up. So again, I don't know. We can all wish for these things, and we would like to have them, as I said, as tools because it's a convenience factor and it will help us stay safe, really, at least for a small fraction of those conditions we have to watch for. But overall, lane splitting isn't the answer to our issues. What is the answer to our issues as far as we being safer? As far as I'm concerned, is we taking responsibility for our own safety, going out, getting training, practicing, being more aware, not drinking while we ride, controlling our speed, because drinking and excess speed are the two prime reasons that motorcyclists have accidents and two prime reasons that we are killed. Okay guys, I guess that's it. I've pretty much exhausted this topic. I know some of you are going to like what I have to say and some of you are going to be all upset with me, and you go ahead and, you know, give me your comments. Just again, be nice. This is just a discussion, right? It's not the end of the world if you disagree with me. Right? And also, you know, if you like the video or just at least like the discussion, please make sure that you click that like sign up there, and even click the bell, subscribe, so that you get involved with this ongoing Mythbuster conversation that I'm having. So alright guys, we'll see you later. If you want to support the channel, again, please look in the description of this video for many ways to do that, right? Including buying t-shirts out there, or buying from Twisted Throttle as well by linking through my website. Or you can become a monthly subscriber by becoming a Patreon. Again, that all goes a long way to keep these videos coming. Alright guys, be safe out there.